Volume 3, Chapter 16 of The Widow Barnaby by Frances Milton Trollope. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 16. A discovery scene, productive of many new relations and various other consequences. The day next but one after this letter reached him, Miss Compton and Agnes were engaged to dine with Lady Elizabeth. Colonel Hubert had not ventured to present himself in the Mall during the interval, for though, on cooler meditation, he did not believe that the unfortunate words, "Let me then confess to you, Colonel Hubert," were meant to usher a confession of love to his rival, he doubted not that they would have been followed by an avowal of her agreeing with himself in deeming his own conduct most reprehensible; and just then he felt he could not receive this, notwithstanding its justice, in such a manner as to assist in obtaining pardon for the fault. To Sir Edward he had mentioned the probability of his brother's early return, but without hinting at the chance of their seeing him at Clifton on his arrival in England. The ladies of the party, namely Lady Elizabeth, Lady Stephenson, Miss Compton, and Agnes, were assembled in the drawing room, the two gentlemen not having yet quitted the dining parlour, when a knock at the door announced company. "Who can that be?" said Lady Stephenson. "Have you invited evening company?" "Not a soul, my dear," replied her aunt. "I mean to have a treat again. I think I am growing sick of curiosities." "Tant mieux, dear aunt," replied Lady Stephenson. "But invited or not, you have visitors coming now. I hear them on the stairs." Lady Stephenson was right. The old butler opened the drawing-room door almost as she spoke, and announced, "Mr. Stephenson." "Frederick!" exclaimed his fair sister-in-law, looking as if she meant to receive him very kindly. "Young Stephenson?" said Lady Elizabeth. "I did not know that he was coming to Clifton." "Sir Edward's brother, I suppose," said Miss Compton. But Agnes said nothing, though had any one laid a hand upon her heart, they would have discovered that his arrival was not a matter of indifference. To receive him with the appearance of it was, however, absolutely necessary, and she very resolutely assumed an aspect of tranquillity. It was not necessary that she should look towards the door to greet him as he entered, and therefore she did not do it; but, notwithstanding the attention she devoted to the pattern of the hearth rug, she became aware, within a moment after this electrifying name had been announced, that not one only, but three people were in the room, and that one of them was a lady. Agnes then looked up, and the first figure which distinctly met her eye was not that of Frederick Stephenson, but of a gentleman bearing the stamp of some 40 years, perhaps, upon his handsome but delicate features. He was not tall, but slightly and elegantly formed, which was perceptible though wrapped in a travelling frock trimmed with fur, and his whole appearance was decidedly that of a gentleman. But who these might be who were with him, or how they were received by Lady Elizabeth, the eye of Agnes had no power to inquire, for it was fascinated, as it were, by the earnest gaze of this stranger, who, having already stepped forward a pace or two nearer to her than the rest, stood looking at her with very evident emotion. The first words she heard spoken were in the voice of young Stephenson, which she immediately recognised, though the purport of them was unintelligible. "Yes, my dear sir, you are quite right," he said, "that is our Agnes." But though these words were somewhat startling, they drew her attention less than the expression of the large blue eyes that were fixed upon her. There was admiration, tenderness, and a strange sort of embarrassment all legibly mingled in that earnest look. But why was it fixed on her? What effect this mute scene produced on the other persons present Agnes could not know, for she did not withdraw her eyes from those of the mysterious stranger, till at length he turned from her, and stepping back, took the hand of a very young but very beautiful girl, whom he led towards the sofa she occupied, and placing her on it, said, "Agnes Willoughby, receive your sister, and let her plead for her father and yours. You have been long, long neglected, my poor child, but there has been some excuse for it. Can you forgive me, Agnes?" "Good God! My father!" she exclaimed, starting up and stretching out her hands towards him. "Is it possible, sir, that you are indeed my father?" "You speak as if you wished it were so, Agnes," he replied, taking her in his arms, and impressing a kiss upon her forehead. "And I will echo your words. Is it possible?" "Possible! Oh yes, sir, it is possible. I have so longed to know that I had a father. And is this sweet creature my sister?" she continued, turning her tearful eyes upon the beautiful girl, who upon this appeal sprang forward, and enclosing both her father and Agnes in her arms, replied to it by saying, "Yes, dearest Agnes, I am your sister, indeed I am, and I know you very well, and all about you, though you know so little about me. But you will not refuse to own me, will you?" For all reply Agnes bent forward and kissed her fondly. Miss Compton, who, as may be supposed, had watched this discovery scene with no little interest, now stepped towards them, while young Stephenson was engaged in explaining it to Lady Elizabeth and his sister-in-law; and looking from one sister to the other, and from them both to their father, she said, " You will perhaps hardly remember that we ever met, Mr. Willoughby, but my name is Compton, and I recall your features perfectly. You once passed an hour at my brother's house when I was there, and that these girls are sisters, no one that sees them together will be likely to deny. God bless them both, pretty creatures! I hope they will each be a blessing to the other. But to be sure, it seems to be a most romantic story, and wonderfully like those I used to read in my bower, Agnes." " There is a good deal that is very sad in my part of it, Miss Compton," replied Mr. Willoughby, " but at this moment I can hardly regret it, as herein I hope to show some excuse for my long negligence respecting my poor girl. Take this on trust, my good lady, will you," he added, holding out his hand to her, " that no displeasure towards me may destroy the happiness of this meeting." Miss Compton gave him her hand very frankly, saying, " I have no right to be very severe upon you, Mr. Willoughby, for, without any misfortunes at all to plead as an excuse for it, our dear Agnes might tell you some naughty stories about me. But she does not look as if she were much inclined to complain of anybody. What a pair of happy, lovely looking creatures ! And how very strong the likeness to each other, and of both to you !" Willoughby retired a step or two, and leaning against the chimney piece, seemed disposed to enjoy the contemplation of the picture she pointed out, in silence. Lady Elizabeth claimed the attention of Miss Compton, that she might express her interest, satisfaction, surprise, and so forth. Lady Stephenson slipped out of the room to communicate the news to her husband and brother, and prepare them for the company they had to receive; and then Frederick Stephenson approached the sisters, and drawing a chair towards them, very freely took a hand of each. That of Agnes trembled. She felt that the happiness of her life would be for ever destroyed, if this young man was come back in consequence of Colonel Hubert's letter, with the persuasion that it was her purpose to accept him; and favourable as was the moment for a sort of universal philanthropy and unrestrained epanchement de coeur, she could not resist the impulse which led her to withdraw her hand, and return his affectionate smile with a look of coldness and reserve. Perfectly undaunted, however, the gay Frederick continued to look at her with an air of the most happy confidence ; but suddenly, as it seemed, recollecting that it was possible, though they had all of them been at least 10 minutes in the room together, no explanation might have yet reached her, he said in a manner to show that he was too happy to be very grave, though quite sufficiently in earnest to deserve belief, " If you accept my Nora for a sister, Agnes, you must accept me for a brother too. She knows that till I saw her I thought you the most charming person in the world, and as she forgives me for this, I hope you will show as much resemblance to her in mind as in person, and forgive me for thinking, when I did see her, that she was still more charming than you." And then it was that Agnes, for the first time in her life, felt wholly, perfectly, and altogether happy. She saw in an instant, with the rapid glance of love, that all the misty cloud that had hung between her and Hubert was withdrawn for ever ; and then she felt how very delightful it was to have a father, and such an elegant, interesting looking father ; and then she became fully aware what a blessing it was to have a sister, and that sister so beautiful, and so capable of inspiring love in every heart — save one, guarded as Hubert's was guarded. Her joy, her new born gladness of spirit danced in her eyes, as she now freely returned the young man's laughing glance, and restoring to him the hand she had withdrawn, she exclaimed, " Oh, Frederick! Why did you not answer Hubert's letter and tell him this?" " It is so, then ? It is as I hoped, my sweet Agnes ; and you will be doubly our sister. Why did I not answer Hubert's letter? Because it was the most mystical, unintelligible, dark, and diplomatic performance that ever was put forth. Did you see it, Agnes ?"" No, I did not," she replied with a smile ;" but I can imagine that it might have been a little in that style. Yet still you should have answered it." " I did answer it ; that is, I replied to it by a line or two written in a prodigious hurry. But you must perceive that I could not enclose Nora in a cover. and as she is, to all intents and purposes, my answer, I was obliged to let him wait till I could convey her properly, and place her before his eyes and his understanding." " And so convince him," replied Agnes, with another smile, full of her new born gaiety, " that the moment she is seen, all other ladies must be forgotten. Prove that to Colonel Hubert, Mr. Stephenson, and I will prove to you "" What, you tremendous looking Sibyl, what? "" A very fatal sister," she replied. And then the door opened, and Lady Stephenson preceded the two gentlemen she had brought from the dining parlour into the room. Agnes, no longer the fearful, shrinking Agnes, sprang forward to meet them, and taking Colonel Hubert by the hand, led him to her father, saying in an altered accent, that at once entered his heart and told him that all was right. " Let me present you to my father, Hubert, to my dear father, Colonel Hubert. He will indeed be doubly dear to us, for he has brought with him a sister for both of us, whom I feel sure we shall for ever love." But hardly did Agnes, who seemed newly awakened from some heavy spell that had benumbed her heart, hardly did she give time for a courteous greeting between the gentlemen, ere she passed her arm beneath that of Colonel Hubert, and led him to the sofa. Frederick started forward to meet him, and laying a hand on each shoulder, said in his ear, yet not so low but that Agnes could hear him too, " It was lucky I did not take you to France with me, Hubert, or I should certainly never have got a wife at all. As it is, however, permit me," he added aloud, " to present you, Colonel Hubert, to Miss Nora Willoughby. Nora, dearest, this gentleman is the best friend I have in the world. My brother's wife is his sister, and your sister, my fair bride elect, will very soon be his wife, or I cannot read the stars. So, as you may perceive, our catastrophe is exceedingly like that great model of all catastrophes, in which the happy hero says, ' And these are all my near relations. Ecce signum, here is my own elder brother. Sir Edward Stephenson, Miss Nora Willoughby. Is she not charming, Edward? I hope I have pleased you at last, and their ladyships, my sisters too, for I assure you everything is very elegant, well born, and so forth. But you are not to sit down by her, though, for all that, unless you make room for me between you, for she has already given way more smiles than I can at all afford to spare ; and besides, I have 100 things to say to her. I want to ask her how she likes you all." Colonel Hubert, as soon as his gay friend had reseated himself, gave one speaking look to Agnes, and then devoted himself entirely to Mr. Willoughby. By degrees the party began to talk together with less of agitation and more of comfort ; but Frederick was not permitted wholly to engross his young fiancee, for all the ladies crowded round her, and vied with each other in giving a cordial welcome to this young foreigner in the land of her fathers. She was in truth a very sweet young creature, and soon converted the kindness which circumstances called for into very cordially liking. Distant hopes were talked of without reserve, and immediate arrangements canvassed. Miss Compton kindly invited the young stranger to share her sister's apartment, a servant was dispatched to secure rooms for Mr. Willoughby and Frederick at the hotel, and the happiness their unexpected arrival had brought to two harassed hearts of the party seemed to diffuse itself very delightfully among them all. At length Miss Compton's carriage was announced, and while the cloaks of the fair sisters were wrapped round them by their vowed servants, Mr. Willoughby performed the same office for her, and took that opportunity of asking leave to wait upon her on the following morning, in order to relate to her such passages of the history of his long exile as might, in some degree, account for his having left her adopted child for so many years without a father. While this appointment was making with the aunt, the niece contrived, unheard by all, to whisper a word or two which led to an appointment for her also. Colonel Hubert had more than once that evening taught her to understand, by the eloquence of looks, the delightful change that had been wrought within him ; but it was Agnes who first found the opportunity of giving expression to it in words. He stood behind her as he arranged her cloak, and when this was done, she turned suddenly round to him, and said, in an accent of playful reproach, " Hubert, may I be happy now?" His answer was, " Will you see me to morrow, and alone?" She blushed ; perhaps at remembering how often she had before wished to converse with him in the manner he now for the first time proposed, but she nodded her assent. He handed her to the carriage, pressed her hand, and whispered 11 o'clock, as he put her into it, and then mounted to his chamber without exchanging a word more with any living soul, that he might enjoy, for the first time since he had yielded up his heart, the luxury of meditating on Agnes and her promised love, without any mixture of self-reproach to poison the enjoyment. CHAPTER XVII.